Hey everyone, it's Richard here at Kelvin Wazoo, bringing you another video. And before I get started, we need to have a little sippy. So I saw a couple other vloggers, and what they were doing was identifying the 10 albums that changed their life. And I kind of thought that would be an interesting theme for an episode. So I started writing down my list of 10 albums. And then I realized, oh, well, this album really didn't change my life. I just really like it. And this one this one really did change my life. So it's a list that I wrote down and just was crossing things off and redoing it because the more I thought more carefully about it, the more I wanted to revise it. And I think I got it down to what I'm going to go with: the 10 albums that changed my life. The first one, and they're not in any particular order, but the first one is this one: The Beatles' Something New. And I probably heard this for the first time when I was maybe 9 or 10, maybe 11 years old. Certainly had been around and released for a few years, but I just remember listening to these songs, and also one of my sisters, had taken me to see two of the Beatle movies, Help and Hard Day's Night. We went in, to a theater to see these films, and they were fun. I remember them just being really, really fun. And the songs in here still, when I listen to them, I feel a pretty strong emotional response. And that kind of tells me, this album changed me, even, at that young age. And probably one of the songs that was really significant to me was I Want to Hold Your Hand. And what it is that it's the German version of I Want to Hold Your Hand. Komm, gib mir deine Hand. And I just thought that was so cool, that they were singing this song in German. I did not know that they kind of got their start in German clubs. So it made sense for them to, want to sing a song in German. But some of these other ones, like Slow Down, I'll Cry Instead, Things We Said Today, Tell Me Why, and I Love Her, I'm Just Happy to Dance with You, If I Fell. I mean, all these songs are super, super great. And I certainly, was a Beatles fan and followed them through their career in the changes of the music. I got the Capitol label with the purple, kind of a purple label. Haven't been really able to find it in Discogs to appropriately catalog, so I don't know what pressing this might be, because I certainly had some trouble finding it in Discogs. All right, the second one I probably was 14 when I first heard this. Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Of course, the full title, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. When I first heard this, it's kind of hard to explain my reaction to it. But I do believe in many ways I fundamentally changed. Um, the music was fantastic. The the playing, the lyrics, the stories, and the songs, everything about it was just this magical, beautiful experience from start with the ominous 5 years, which, you know, might sound a little bit dated today because, in the 70s, we were facing issues like the threat of nuclear war, nuclear annihilation, as well as really, really severe air and water pollution, and outlooks for the future were not always very optimistic. There were a lot of post apocalyptic films coming out. I mean, they still come out now, but they really had a relevance back then. So a song like 5 Years, yeah, it carried some weight. And I kind of think it does today because I think there is a new developing sense with global warming and also with political things going on, that there is again this sense of if we don't get our act together, we may never get another chance. But then there are all these other songs. There's, Soul Love is just this great, beautiful song with a really nice, smooth rhythm. Then Moon Age Daydream is just killer with Mick Ronson playing guitar, and just a great song. I'm an alligator, I'm a mama papa coming for you. Then Starman, this message I should say, a starman. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He wants to come and meet us, but he thinks he'll blow our mind. The notion of this starman wanting to help us, but just by showing up, he could easily be rejected. And then It Ain't Easy, which I recently learned is actually a cover. It Ain't Easy. Yeah, Ron Davies. So it's a cover of a Ron Davies song. On side two, you've got Lady Stardust, which is my favorite Bowie song of all. I mean, I like that song even better than Heroes, and other songs. It's just a mesmerizing song, which I guess it was also sung about Mark Bolan of T-Rex, which I didn't know, but still, the sexual ambiguity was a really strong message for me at the time I was 14. And I just really, really like the song. I think it's beautiful. It touches me every time I listen to it. And then Starred, Hang On to Yourself, then, the title Ziggy Stardust, which is a kind of a little on the dark side because we're talking about a pop star who, his band is disintegrating. Suffragette City, which just got a ton of radio play. And then Rock and Roll Suicide. I can remember watching the King Biscuit Flower Hour and seeing the film, the concert video of when David Bowie retired the Spiders from Mars in that last show at the Odeon, I think. And that was just an incredible show. And I just remember him at the end of that song, "Give me your hands, give me your hands," and he's walking around the front of the stage and reaching out and to, touching hands with people, and then there's a bodyguard behind him to pull him back so he doesn't get pulled into the crowd. He wasn't a big man. I went to the David Bowie exhibit at the Museum of Contemporary Art here in Chicago a few years ago. And, they had like suits that he wore, in certain videos and things like that. And I was looking at them and I was going, wow, he's a pretty small guy. But definitely this album opened myself to myself in a very significant and life-changing way. Now, another one, this would have been a few years later when I was sophomore, junior in high school, I think. And it was this one, Killer. A friend of mine, still a friend, childhood friend of mine, I remember him, talking about this record, singing the songs or whatever. And when I finally got a copy and listened to the whole thing, this was like totally blew my mind. It's just amazing record. And I would just listen to it over and over and over again. The darkness of and the darkness and irony of a song like "Dead Babies," and "You Drive Me Nervous." But "Halo of Flies," I really liked. Probably my favorite song on there because of the composition, the orchestration, with the guitars, coming in, and then a little segue with the drums and this story being told of a spy. They hit "Be My Lover." "Under My Wheels" just kicks off the album in a really intense kind of way. It was just an album that I have to agree that, yeah, it changed my life in a way that it's hard to put into words. But again, maybe in a similar fashion to David Bowie, Alice Cooper was an expression of self that I really identified with. Not that I was that kind of a macabre, dark kind of person, but nonetheless, that expression of self and soul unabashedly was very moving for me, and I connected, with this album also. About the same time as Killer was another album that I ordered. I was a member of the Columbia Record Club, so I was getting lots of records. My collection was growing quickly, and one of them was this one, Neil Young, Harvest. And this, again, it's kind of hard to pinpoint how it changed me, but it did. It really led me to think about things in a manner that I, up until then, 14, 15 years old, I'd never thought about these things. I'd never thought about them in in any way, let alone how the songs in this record were directing me to think about them. I mean, Out on the Weekend, the opener, was just always kind of gave me this lonesome, restless feeling. Um, and then, Harvest, following that up, and A Man Needs a Maid. Um, Are You Ready for the Country? That was another one, too, that, you know, again, there was that kind of that darkness, to it. Uh, a man who may have lived his life a little too recklessly and was going to suffer the consequences for it. Um, was definitely something that moved me. Old Man, that was perhaps Neil Young's effort to bridge the generation gap, which at that time in the mid 70s, we were talking about the generation gap a lot, on how people of my generation, and then of my parents' generation, it was like an impasse. There was didn't seem to be any effective way to communicate across those generations, and this song really brought it down to the simplicity. Old man, just look at my life. I'm a man like you. I need someone to love me the whole day through. Look in my eyes, and you can tell that's true. It's so simple, an appeal that still was kind of a difficult bridge for many to cross. The song Words, the closer, was a very powerful one. And it kind of beguiled me for a long, long, long time. And I think I was a junior in high school. I did a report, so to speak, for one of my creative writing composition classes in high school. So I was doing this analysis of the song Words, and I can remember having this epiphany right in the middle of my presentation of, again, how this notion of aging, Neil Young was working to express, and the loneliness that can happen with people as they age. And that song still, gives me chills to this day when I listen to it. Just an amazing album. And not only is it one that changed my life, it remains my favorite Neil Young album of his entire catalog. Now, I've admitted before, I'm a Frank Zappa fan. And certainly there is one of his albums that changed my life. And I don't know if it's one you might, think is logical or whatnot, but it's this one, Burnt Weenie Sandwich, um, which I'm not sure if it's been reissued, on Zappa Records. I got, the one on Bazaar. This album, oh, I would have been younger. So this would have been around, because I think this is what, 1960, 69. So I was 11 years old in 69, but I was probably listening to it when I was 12 or 13, so a couple years later. And I just remember listening to this over and over and over. I would go up into my room and put the headphones on and listen to it. It was so soothing that it would kind of put me to sleep, but not because the music was boring or anything like that. It just so relaxing, and I could just feel any tensions that I had. I mean, 12, 13 year olds have tensions. And this really eased me through them. And it's just such an interesting song, or excuse me, album because of the songs in the way it's structured. I mean, all right, so burnt weenie sandwich. Well, what is a sandwich? It's, some good stuff in between two slices of bread. And that's what this is. You got the two slices of bread, which is the opening and closing tunes, which are both doo-wop tunes. WPLJ and then Valerie. And so they supply the bread. And then in between is this jazz fusion, avant-garde strangeness and beauty. The theme from Burnt Weenie Sandwich, Igor's Boogie. But I think probably that, the closer on side one, ABC, which is a piano solo by Ian Underwood, is one of the most beautiful songs in all of, what I would call popular music, and definitely one of the most beautiful songs that Frank Zappa has ever composed. And then side two with the little house I used to live in, which is broken down into various parts. The overture, the whole theme for Holiday in Berlin is just such a super cool and beautiful melody and theme. And then, the saxophones, and then, the little interruptions, so to speak, with the percussive parts, that little bicycle horn solo. It's just an amazing album, and it, to this day, remains, used to be my favorite Zappa record, but it's not my favorite anymore. One Size Fits All is my favorite now, but at this time, One Size Fits All had not been released. So this, stuck with me and was my favorite for many, many, many years until I did finally hear One Size Fits All. All right, got to keep moving here. I'm spending like an average here of, more than 2 minutes per album because I've only done. It's like 4 minutes per album. All right, so the next one is first I'm going to show the CD, and that's Nirvana, Nevermind. I bought this when it first came out because I saw the video Smells Like Teen Spirit on the show 120 Minutes. So this was probably one of the first, if not the first, series of CDs that were ever released. It's got that unnamed track at the end that follows something like 9 or so minutes of silence. Because I can remember, at the end of the CD, and it didn't stop. How like a CD changer will make that loud click, whatever, when the CD is done, and it's, because I had a circular CD changer, and, I just thought, I would just wait, before I was going to take it out. But the signal for the time, kept advancing, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? So that's when I would fast forward until I saw the lights, the output lights indicate that, okay, now we've got some music again. And then that's when this, last song that doesn't have a title shows up. And then within the last couple of years, I ended up buying this the limited edition on vinyl, which is actually, 4 LPs. It's got the original album and then some B-sides and some other studio sessions. Very cool um, material with it. And then, I noticed that it did not have, for the original, it did not have that unusual song at the end. I've looked in Discogs. I don't know if this very first CD has any particular value to it. It doesn't seem, but it isn't real clear to me. I think I did find an entry that identified it as having that hidden track. I haven't checked the resale value to see if it has appreciated any. But anyway, the long and short of it is when I first saw that video on MTV on 120 Minutes, I was like, this was, it was, hard rock. I mean, they were calling it grunge, but this is hard rock that is, grittier and noisier than what you would normally associate, let's say, with a heavy metal band. And it was a sound that just, again, sometimes I get, lost for words, but it was an amazing, amazing, amazing album. It quickly became on my constant playlist, listening to it over and over and over again. And it shifted my musical tastes into a direction that I had not ventured in before. And probably more so, because I watched 120 Minutes and that was expanding my horizons in terms of music and bands, etc., and other genres. But Nevermind really pushed me over the edge, so to speak. Keep moving here. King Crimson, in the Court of the Crimson King. I was probably 10 or 11 when I first heard this, and some of the songs that are on here really, really chill me to this day. Obviously, there's 21st Century Schizoid Man, which, everybody probably associates with this album. But everything else on here is just, amazing. Moonchild is, I really like that song. And I've heard others say that it's, but I know I really, really like that song. And then, the Court of the Crimson King with the Return of the Fire Witch and the Dance of the Puppets. It just such amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. And then the Epitaph was probably remains my, or I should say not was, but does remain to be my favorite song. Again, when I was listening to this, it was that, late 60s into the 70s. And there was this ominous feeling that we were headed to the edge, to the end. And, that song was spooky and beautiful at the same time. Going on here with, this one. This is, probably an album that would be on a lot of people's lists as being very significant in their lives. Again, I was probably 14 when I was first listening to this. And the whole, the concept just, there were other concept albums, all right? But this one really flowed from beginning all the way through to the end. There's hardly any gaps. Everything just flows right into the other. The only real significant gap between songs is when you have to flip sides. And it sounds amazing. The engineering, sound engineering. I've talked about this before. Alan Parsons was the sound engineer. And he did a fucking fantastic job with this album. I mean, the Floyd were so impressed with his sound engineering. They wanted him to do the sound engineering on their next album, which was going to be Wish You Were Here, which, by the way, I like better than this one, but this was a life changer. But now he moved on to do the Alan Parsons Project. Now, this next one, I don't have it on vinyl. I just have the CD, but it was a life-changing album for me, and that is Madonna's Confessions on a Dance Floor. So this CD was a lifesaver for me. I had recently gone through a romantic breakup, and this CD helped me get through it. I would play this every day, several times a day, really, really, really loud. And it was lucky because at that time I lived in an apartment and a building in which all my walls were exterior walls. It was like the building was shaped like an H, so I was like on one of the legs. And then underneath me was my garage, so there was no neighbor below me, no neighbor behind me or whatever. And then, the only wall I shared, and that was only a partial wall, was my bedroom wall with the middle apartment, the apartment that would be in the horizontal part of an H. And the only part of the wall really that was shared with that apartment was my walk-in closet. So I could blast this music at my stereo and not have to worry about bothering neighbors. And yeah, I was playing this a lot, really, really, really loud. Which now brings us to the 10th one. And that would be Ghost in the Machine by the Police. Again, this was what, 1980, right? So I was living in 1981, it looks like, and I saw their tour. I was living in Tucson, and they played in Tucson. That was their next stop, as I heard, after they played the US Festival someplace in California. And then they came to Tucson, and oh God, what a show. What an amazing, amazing, amazing show. They played this entire album, plus a whole lot of other songs from their other albums. It was a super, super great show. And again, this was a record that I just played all the time because there was this combination of social awareness going on in the songs. And then there were also some poppy love songs, like Everything She Does Is Magic, was a good one. But a lot of the other was very introspective, Secret Journey, rehumanize yourself. And then dealing with the technological world, this was 1981, so things like there were Apple computers, were being developed. So things were rapidly changing. And this album fit into that time. I think there's probably a few lyrics in some of the songs that are a bit dated or even hackneyed. But nonetheless, this is one of those albums that falls into my list of the 10 albums that changed my life. So what are your 10 albums? You know, you could leave a comment. Do you share any feelings, intense or otherwise, about any of the ones that I showed you? You know, leave a comment. Be sure to like my video and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate you sitting through this 35 minutes of me rambling about these very significant releases in my life. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I see you again. And always remember, please enjoy your music.